What's going on, everybody? So in this video, I'm going to give you guys something different, which is going to be a story time video where I'm going to talk to you guys about my experience where I used to work retail. I'm going to start from the bottom and then work my way to the top throughout the years of working retail while I was in college. So while that's going on, I'm going to just draw out of my imagination pretty much my experience. So it's almost like therapy for people who went through working retail, even for myself, because it's always good to just talk about it, get it out the way instead of keeping it inside your head, right? So I'm going to draw and talk. So, and this is going to be a story time where I'm going to talk to you guys about my first retail job, which was working at Levi's. That's right, that was my first ever retail job. And what's funny is that before working at Levi's, I've been always trying to apply to different jobs, and it used to be called summer youth. So it was called like summer youth program. That's what it was called, summer youth program. And I'm like, I need a job. And I remember my family, like my siblings, older siblings, used to kind of not bully me, but kind of like put me in this uncomfortable perspective, because they would say, well, how come you never worked and you're 19? You know, I was 19 at the time. So how come you never worked before? Like, we worked fast food retail, KFC, McDonald's, all of that when we were 17 and 16 and 15, and you still never worked at all. So it did definitely make me feel, you know, insecure. And at that time, you know, I didn't really need the money, because I was, then again, regret, which is taking out student loans and things of that nature. You know, never do that to compensate for, you know, having that type of expense, because you're going to eventually have to pay it back. So that's that. Anyway, I also still wanted to work retail just because of that insecurity experience, or lack of experience, based upon my siblings. So I went to, and it's funny enough, because this is during the time where it was a hybrid. In other words, you could still go to an actual, you know, retail store and ask for an application, but then you can also apply online, right? So that was during that transitional period where you could still walk in and ask for application. Now it's pretty much you have to do everything online, so that kind of sucks, right? Anyway, so yeah, I went there, right? And this is during the time when I had to pick up my niece. So I used to always do that, like pick her up after school. And I decided, you know what? Why not just go to Levi's, right? So I went over there, and she was like probably like 5 at the time. So she was all over the place. And that kind of helped me, because the fact that she had the innocence, youth, you know, at the time. And it really, you know, got my manager at the time there to be more positive rather than, we don't want him. It became more like, you know what, how about you know, we have an interview available, a group interview, and it's going to take place at whatever in the afternoon. So my niece actually helped me to get that opportunity. Mind you, I've never worked, so this was definitely difficult, because it's like, why hire someone who never worked a day in his life, right? So that's what happened, and you know, because of her innocence, I was able to get a follow-up. So then I went there on a Monday to my first ever interview. Mind you, I was extremely nervous. I've never been in an interview before, never jumped in an interview, didn't know what to say. And at the same time, you know, it was a group interview, so that's even more intimidating. So I went there, and it was asking a lot of questions, well, a few questions, right? So there was the head manager, and then there was the person who was working there for a couple of years, where pretty much I call it the kiss ass person because they was around my age, but you can just tell that based upon their demeanor, they came off like, you know, kiss ass, because they wasn't necessarily a supervisor. At the same time, they wasn't, you know, a high-end manager. So they was just mainly like a supporter. That's why I call it kiss ass, like the groupie, right? So they'll ask these questions like, what would you do if a customer is being disgruntled, or they are disagreeing with your advances towards trying to sell a product? What would you do? And I just was like, and the worst part about it, that it was in like, you had to answer one at a time, you know. And I just feel like the group interviews just has a lot of ego and a lot of stroke, you know, with the companies like interviewing multiple people at once. You know, it's weird. I didn't like it, honestly. And you know, you always gotta have the one that's like, it all comes in different ranges, right? You have one that's like a vet, so it's easy for this person because they've been working retail for a couple of years, so they know what to say, right? And they have the language of talking in terms of like knowing what to do in those type of circumstances. And then you got people like me who at the time I just had no idea. So I was just improvising with the stuff that I was saying, just to be, you know, I guess not politically correct, but just trying to appease towards, you know, the whole interview because I want the job. And the thing about it is, after that group interview, sometimes in life you could just feel the tension, like, I don't think I got the job. And I felt that, right? So what happened was they did not follow up with me. So I'm like, oh shoot, so I did not get the job at all, right? So I'm like, okay. So I just kept on applying for other jobs and things of that nature. And then a couple of months later, one of the managers sent me a message. Like, they called me, not sent me a message, they called me. And they was like, hey, so we have an opening, right? We have an opening, and we want you to know if you want to jump in on this group interview. So at that point, I'm like, oh man, they got to put me in another group interview. Like, because the way she was talking, it was just like, yeah, you pretty much got the job. And I'm like, okay. But then like, no, we want to push you in another group interview. I'm like, oh, yeah. So I came into this second group interview, right, a couple of months later. And with this one, I was a bit more comfortable because, you know, after coming off of the first horrific interview, I pretty much knew more of what to say compared to the first time. And crazy enough, literally the next 2 or 3 days, it was pretty much right away, you know, not on the spot on the second interview, but pretty much it was right away where she said, hey, you know, if you're interested, we would like to hire you in this job at Levi's. And I was just like, wow, you know, I was excited, you know, because I never worked a day in my life at that time. This was many years ago. And then it's just so, to show that this is many years ago, she said, okay, we're going to start you off with $9.25 an hour. And I'm like, I'll take it, you know. It's crazy because now in this day and age, it's like what, $15, $18 is like minimum wage or something like that. So things have definitely changed due to inflation. But yeah, it was $9.25 an hour. And I remember when I first got there, they said, okay, we're gonna give you, you know, one free pair of jeans, and then we're gonna also give you a top. So one top, one free pair of jeans, and then you get like a 40% like discount for any, you know, any item that you buy in the store. You get 40% off, which is funny because people end up giving back the money. It's just like they give you a check, but then people like some of the items that they will literally give it back. So it's like you're giving back your money to the company. I always found that really interesting. I'm not gonna lie, over the years I was definitely doing that. So yeah, so at this time I didn't have no fashion. I didn't have any style, honestly. I was literally having pretty much clothes that was based upon my brother's hand-me-downs. So they call it hand-me-downs. In other words, sorry about that. Yeah, so then hand-me-downs is pretty much you know, people are giving you the clothes that they don't want. So hand-me-downs. So I never bought clothes. So this kind of helped as far as like, oh, okay, give you a better sense of like fashion and, you know, better sense of style and attires and things of that nature. So when I first started working at Levi's, it was very intimidating. Like my first day, I'm like, okay, came in as a sales associate. I didn't do any stock. I didn't do any cashier. I didn't do anything in the fitting room. They just push you in a section. So you got your 501s. And let me even write that down right here. Put it into the design. 501. And then just do it like that. There we go. So you got your 501s, right? And 501 is like pretty much like straight leg, like the old school button. Like they don't have the zipper, you know, the zipper for that area. So they literally got the button, which is to me very annoying. But that's like the straight leg jeans, right? So again, I'm not gonna go into like giving you guys like the encyclopedia of Levi's. I'm just saying you got 501s, which is like pretty much straight leg. Then you got 511s, which is pretty much men's like really skinny jeans. And I believe you got, I don't really know the rest of them. I think 513, which is not as skinny. And then you got 512s. And then for women, you got like slim fit. Slim fit. You got slim curve, demi curve, and supreme curve. So at first they put me, of course, in the men's side, right? They put me in the men's side. And they kept telling me, you got to go up to the customer every time. Go to the customer. If they're touching the jeans, if they're looking around, you got to go there and ask them, hey, welcome to Levi's. How may I help you? And I was doing that so much that I feel like I was like a robot, you know, like going straight up to them. Hey, welcome to Levi's. And there was so many times where they will be scared or they'll just be like, oh, they just, you know, they get caught off guard. Like, oh. And the thing about it is that I was in a tourist type of area, right? So yes, the area you can easily, like the money can make itself, but of course, being a sales associate, it pushes it further into obviously them buying more. So I remember they had this thing called UPT, which is units per transaction, right? Units transaction, units per transaction, where the customer, you know, the average amount of customers throughout that shift, throughout that quarter, where they will buy on average, did they buy 2 items? Did they buy 3 items? Did they buy 4 items? Now, of course, they wanted it to average out around 2.0, which is like 2 items. So it shows that like majority of customers are buying stuff more in bulk as opposed to just 1 item, right? So a lot of that was being monitored, and it just felt like whenever we was about to start work, it felt like some sort of like a huddle. We will huddle together like some sort of like a football huddle. Like, come on, guys, let's break. Come on, let's come together. I want you to go in this section and this section. And before we start, today we're doing pretty good. Our UPT is this score, and so far this week we got $600,000, and everybody's like, woo, we're doing good. And I'm just like, man, 600,000. Shoot, how come I can't get half of that? Why am I getting 925 if we're selling? You know, I get it. I mean, it's retail. We're like the bottom of the barrel, but it's at the same time, it's like we're the ones who are garnering their money, because if we're helping them make a lot of money, because if it's not for us, people will just go in there and just buy 1 item usually, right? Or they'll just window shop us and they'll go in there just to look around and then they'll leave. So with the sales associate, it's like, you know, we're there to like push them beyond just like looking around. And then you got stock, which is like they was quick enough to find certain items that are not upstairs. And that used to be, well, before I get into that, there's like so much to unpack. That's why I made it into this title, illustration, drawing and talking, story time type video. So yeah, so we will huddle, and I remember those times I'm just like, oh, like, because I was in college at that time. So I was literally in college while working retail, which is very typical, of the American dream, so to speak. So I remember those times where it's like I will either not have class that day, or I will have class but later in the evening, right? So usually it switches up. Usually it'll be class in the morning, then I'll work retail in the later afternoon, or it will be morning shift working retail, and then I'll have class in the later afternoon. So it just switches up, right? It really depends, because I was there working part-time because I was in school full-time, right? So I'll go there sometimes, especially like in the morning. The morning was definitely it was good and bad. Good in the sense of at least I leave early, so I don't have to deal with a lot of customers, because customers don't really come in until like peak hours, which was like around the afternoon, later in the afternoon, like around like 3 or 4. But early in the morning, like around 10 a.m., most of the time you don't really get customers. It's just pretty much bland, pretty much blank. Like people don't really go in. But it's funny because after talking about the managers would say, oh, so far we did 55,000, and our goal is to hit 70,000 on the quota, and blah blah blah. And then we're just like, okay. And then they're like, okay, so Danielle, you're gonna be in women's section. Lucas, you're gonna be in the 501 section, and then Marcus, you're gonna be in the fitting room. All right, go. Let's get going. And then we just go out to the races, right? And the thing about it is the simple fact that there was times where things was a bit annoying, not gonna lie, because there's times where there's nothing to do, and like most retail, managers do not like that. They do not like if they just see employees do nothing. So I used to get annoyed by one of my managers. It's like, hey, why are you just standing there? I'm like, because there's nothing to do. Well, we don't pay you to just stand there. Do something. Fold the clothes. I'm like, it's early in the morning. Like, these clothes are already been folded. It's like people already, like our employees who stayed in for closing fixed all these clothes. Yeah, but we don't want you to stand there, so do something. Like, okay. Then I'll just like refold the jeans. Oh man, I folded so many jeans now to the point where I'm like a jean folding expert. I have no problem, like, at all, even when I do laundry to this day. I guess that's a good takeaway, right? It's like I'm able to fold jeans easily. But anyway, they had this thing, right, called Curve ID. I'm gonna draw it right here. Curve. Hopefully I spelled it right. Curve. And I'll put like Curve ID. Now, Curve ID was literally trying to identify a woman's waist, because every woman got a different set of waist. So they had jeans that fit accordingly based upon their waist to hip ratio, right? And the thing about it is that in that job, they really pushed this whole Curve ID because it brought a lot of like comfortability afterwards towards the sales associate and the actual, the customers, right? So I remember when I was like, you know what? Why don't I just start doing that, right? Because they used to always put out like, oh, this person did 12 Curve IDs this time. Man, Curve ID is literally like a measuring tape as well. So you got to measure the person to figure out what jeans work for them. So all of us, each of us working at Levi's, we all had this measuring device. So we go up to the customer and they're like, oh, hey, like, how's it going? Welcome to Levi's. How may I help you? And they're like, oh, we're good. And then you just throw out like, do you know your Curve ID? And they're like, what's a Curve ID? And then you explain, oh, it's a measuring device to help you determine your identification of the jeans that you should fit, rather than you just going back and forth in the fitting room, not knowing your actual fit because of your hip to waist ratio. So then they're like, oh, I didn't know about that. I'm like, okay, I got this device that can help measure you. And man, it's so cringy. But yeah, that's like usually like the line, I guess it's the sales associate pickup line to get them into being like, okay, I guess you gotta, if you measure me, that can help. So then I was a whiz when it came down to curve ID, right? I used to do a lot of those because it just made things more interesting, especially if you just work in this, retail 9 to 5, and it's like, it's very redundant. So it definitely helps in terms of like getting them comfortable, the customers, and also get myself comfortable and break out of the monotony of doing the same repetitive stuff over and over, working there in retail. So it was really cool. And that just gave me that competitive edge, because I'm like, you know what? I want to get a lot in curve IDs. I want to get the most I can. So there was one time where I was on a roll. It was like a 4-hour shift, and I did like 64 of them. Like I was going back to back to back, mainly because a lot of them was like families, so they came in as a family or came in as a group. And then at the same time, it also had, had momentum. And momentum is a real thing, when you are doing something and people are comfortable and other people are seeing it, it creates this like popularity momentum where everybody feels comfortable of like, hey, I want to do that too. Hey, me too. So I'm going back and forth with the measuring tape, like, like over and over and over, like measuring people left to right. And everybody's like, oh, look at that. Because, we had, we all not just had the measuring tape for the curve ID, but we all had a walkie-talkie to listen to the managers and also do like stock checks to let it's so funny as I'm talking, it's like coming back to me as far as like remembering nuances, right? So we also had like stock check to let the people downstairs who are in charge of stock to bring up the items, right? So yeah, so they were like, oh, look at that, Marcus did another one. Marcus got another curve ID. They always be just bigging the person who's doing good. They do that on purpose because they want other people to feel jealous so they could do the same thing to step it up. And especially when it comes down to like, because it's not commission, but they act like it's commission. So it's like, oh, Jennifer so far is in first place because she got 3,000 sales. Like she sold so far 3,000 garments, and then Jimmy's in second place, and he is selling so far 2,565. And then Crystal's in third place with 1,325, like something like that, right? So yeah, so then it makes everybody else jealous, like, oh man, I gotta step it up, I want to be in first place. So it's that weird psychology of like making people work extra hard, but you're not getting paid more by doing that. So it's one of those funny things. But yeah, so with the curve ID, I did 64. I was going in, and I remember there was a few times in the job where they will send us to different areas, right? We'll go to like one of the regional or flagship areas and make us do these activities and get to know other employees from different areas of Levi's. And I remember my head manager was there, like the store manager. And I had a little chip on my shoulder because I'm like, hey, like I did a lot of curve IDs. Like I was just like, yo, and I remember when we had to watch this PBT, this PowerPoint presentation, and it was talking about like how curve IDs are important. I remember I was like, hey, I did like 64 curve IDs. And I remember my store manager kind of just like, yeah, okay. Like it was just a translation, like, we don't care. Like the Stephen A. Smith, we don't care. And I'm like, what? It's like really, like I did so much of this curve. I dedicated it, like I was going in and I sold a lot of garments for you guys, and for her to be the store manager to be all like nonchalant about like, okay, whatever. Like what? I'm one of those people where it's like, I know some people are like, oh, but you're sensitive, who cares? Like, but I'm one of those people where it's like, I like to feel appreciated if I'm put it into work, I don't have to go in and do that, but if just a little gesture of like, yeah, yeah, he definitely did a lot. Like, yeah, we appreciate that. Like, little things like that just makes, people forget to have the tendency of, like, little things can make a big difference. So by giving that type of appreciation or acknowledgement, it will make me want to do more. But I remember that was a bit soul crushing because I used to go in when it came down to that, right? But ever since that happened, it just went downhill. Like, I'm just gonna literally just put like an arrow going down, because as I'm talking, I'm just like creating this stuff here. It just went down. It was down bad. It was down bad. I just ended up not really caring about, because it was a wake-up call. It's like, wait a minute, this is retail. She kind of put me back into reality. It's like, this is retail. Why am I putting in all this work for people who just don't care? And, the store manager was, she got salary money and I got the retail money. But yeah, even though I was actually working there for a good amount of time, and I've seen a lot of people come and go. There was this one employee when he was there, even before I was there, and this guy was dedicated to the craft, and I honestly don't understand why. The reason why I don't understand why, because it's like, it's retail, man. This guy was consistent. He was always in the 501 section. He's always in that 501 section. And this dude, every time, will get like 3,000 on average sales. 3,000. And mind you, it's not commission. You don't get paid extra money to work here. As far as like selling the garments, you don't get a commission out of it. So you're literally getting paid the same as everybody else, but you're working super duper hard. And at the same time, this is what I realized. He wasn't part of the Kiss Ass Club. He wasn't part of that. I'm literally gonna like put that right there. Kiss. And I put like a booty. Kiss. Yeah, and then just do that. Bam. He wasn't part of that. He was not part of that at all. He wasn't part of it. So he wasn't part of the groupies at all. And because of that, but he was really good at his job, he is what you consider, like in Hollywood, he was typecasted. So he was never ever going to be the main role, the leader, or I guess the main role, or to ever bump him up into anything bigger. They just kept him in that same bubble. While you had people who worked there less than him as far as like the years of working there, and they moved up into cashier. Why did they move up to cashier? It's not that they're really good at being a cashier. It's because they was becoming buddies with the managers. So even on break, they will go and get the same food together. They'll go to the same store. They will eat together, talk together in the offices and all this type of stuff. Talk after hours. All this kissing the booty that made them get more booty, as in money, more moolah. And with him, unfortunately, he just wasn't. He was very like straight cut. Like, hey, I'm just here to do really good at my job, and then I bounce. There was a time where he wanted to be a cashier, and they told him, they was like, hey, you're so good at what you do that we prefer for you to stay here. Stay in this position forever. So I think he eventually quit, right? Because by the time I left, he was no longer there. So I guess he came to that realization, like, yeah, they just using me. You're so good that we're just gonna keep you right there. We don't want you to progress. And that was the first time I realized too in life, where people, especially in corporate America or even retail, tomato, when you become so good at what you do and you don't have, you're not a kiss ass, they're going to typecast you and they're not going to respect you. So you're going to get paid the same amount, no raise, no anything dealing with more money because of the hard work that you do. No, you're going to get paid the same amount because you're so good at doing the same thing but you're not good as far as socially kissing our ass. Just saying. That's how it is. It's politics. Everywhere you go is politics, right? So, yeah, I felt sorry for him, honestly. Now, when it came down to me, I wasn't one of those like really good sales associate. There was times where the money made itself, right? Families came to my section. I didn't really need to do any work. There are times where I put in so much work, but nobody wanted to buy the item. At this point of working at Levi's, I was starting to get tired of it. Honestly, I was just like, all right, I need to find a better job. Because not only people started to leave, right? Because I've seen so many things, because retail's a revolving door. So not only I've seen a lot of people leave, I also seen people get laid off. So I was in fear that, oh man, I think I'm going to get laid off, because if they're laying off people who are better than me, honestly, I think I'm going to be next. So at this time, I was, applying for other jobs over and over. Didn't get anything. Rejected like usual, right? We don't want you, the typical automatic response. Unfortunately, we have moved to other candidates. It's not you, it's me. But good luck on your future endeavors. It's like, this is just automated. You don't care about my existence. No, we don't, but we just don't, You're not even saying anything. You're just automated. Yeah, that's true. So that's that. And I remember when I was like, you know what? At that time, I used to buy clothes at H&M just because it was cheap. And one of my managers that used to work at H&M, he ended up working there. I was like, oh shoot, you work here? I was like, yeah. I was like, oh, hey, you don't mind if you could put in a word? Because at that time, I really wanted to transition out of there. They wasn't giving me, I think each year it went up by 20 cents per hour. So I think it just went up to, from $9.25, it went up to $9.70 or something like that. It wasn't that much. Oh, and don't get me started with out calls. Oh my gosh. Out calls was the worst. I'm remembering all this stuff as I'm talking to you guys. I have no script. So I just, keeping it authentic and natural. Out calls sucked. The thing about out calls is pretty much you have to call the job, right? You got to call the job 2 hours prior. And then you got to ask them, hey, am I coming in to work at 12 o'clock to 4, right? Something like that, right? And they're like, okay, let the supervisor know. Please hold. Man, oh man, there was times, right, where I literally was waiting for 30 minutes. I'm like, come on. Let me know. And it was a weird conundrum, because if they say no, you feel relieved, right? And you get to just chill, relax, go back to sleep, right? Because sometimes it was a morning shift. That was an out call. So I have to wake up early in the morning, 2 hours prior. So it'll be 7 a.m. or something like that. And they'll keep you on hold for a while, for 30 minutes. There was times where I literally hung up. I hung up because they just kept me on hold for a while. So I hung up and I called back. And they're like, yeah, sorry about that. I'm like, what the It was so annoying. So there's times where, because I'll call right here. I'll put the phone thing right there. There we go. Put a phone indicator. So there's times where I will be on hold for so long, I'll call back, and then they'll tell me, hey, you have to come in today. I'm like, oh! It's like you put me on hold for more than 30 minutes, and now I'm under pressure because you put me on hold for so long to take a shower, dress up, and get my butt to Levi's so I can make it on time. It's just... And the worst part about it is that this is during the drought era. So in case you don't know, in retail, right? After Christmas, around like around January, February, March, around that time is when things are at an all-time low, because Christmas is a bulk, Black Friday is a bulk, so everybody's just like buying items like crazy, right? They just buy a lot of stuff because of a discount. And then after that is when it's a drought. That's the transitional period where like no one really cares about going there. They're just, you know, no one's really going out there, right? So at that time, it's literally just like, okay, so we don't have enough. It's like budget cut, but we're not firing you, but we're cutting your hours so much to the point where your check is like dust. So this is where you get out calls, right? Now it switches to out calls. Now we don't really have, like, you have one day. Let's say, for example, you work 4 days, right? 4 days. So you have one day where you have to go to work. So it's no out call. You just have to go to work. But then the 3 days out of the 4 is out calls, right? So it'll be like, let's say like a 9 a.m. It'll be like 4-hour shifts, all right? So quick, like let's say like 9 to 3, like, no, that's like, well, 10, 11, 12, 1. It'll be like 9 to 1 or something like that, you know, like, or 12 to 4 or some, like, things of that nature, right? And you will have to call 2 hours in advance. So you call them like, hey, am I gonna come in at this time? They're like, give me a second, which is way more than a second. And then they'll return and be like, no. I'm like, dang, so 3 times in a row you guys didn't need me. Yeah. So then your check will end up being like $100. How is that gonna? What is that? That's my phone bill. You know, like $100, or even less than that. Sometimes it'll be like $60, just because of the fact that they didn't really need you. You only had one day where they had you working it on a 4-hour shift, and everything was alcohol and everything was denied. So I had to go through that. And that was another reason why I'm like, yeah, I don't want to continue work here, because this is another thing too, is that they always do like a change of guard. So when they notice that, okay, we have an employee, he's not like the best of the best, or she's not the best of the best, but she still is working here, we're going to try to give more hours towards the new employees so they have more of an incentive to keep working here, while the old ones who are not doing so well, we just want to kind of make them quit. Like, we want them to feel like, okay, I'm not really making money, so just get out of here. And that's the thing about retail. It literally is a revolving door. Like, they don't care. They don't care. You know, you're just there as an expendable. You're replaceable. So yeah. At this time, it's funny because I remember they had Canadian Goose, and I was like, what the heck is Canadian Goose? So this was so old at the time where they put it on shelf, because they didn't have their own, like, you know, brick and mortar in the US. So they'll have it sporadically throughout other stores as like cross promotion, I guess, like collaboration. And I remember the first time seeing it, it was horrible. I'm like, what is this crap? It was like mustard, like orangey yellow. Then it had that logo, and it was like, I remember looking at the price. I was like, Jesus, who's gonna pay for this? This didn't look terrible, and at the same time, the price is ridiculous. Like, so the price was like $700 for this, and it's crazy because now looking back and seeing how it is now, the accomplishments and how the brand identity, how people are more familiar with Canadian Goose, it's like, wow, like, yeah, that is how it is. You know, it is what it is. Now they got different colors, different features, but I'm just bringing it up because that was a time when it was in its infancy. So no one really knew about it. It looked weird. Probably everybody knew about it in Canada, but they started to market it towards the US. And I don't think, so far, I could be wrong, but when I was working there, I don't think anybody sold a Canadian Goose. Just being real. And it makes sense because Levi's is like, what, $65 at the time for like a pair of jeans. 65 to like $90. Then you get like some price range to like $700 on a jacket, a Canadian Goose coat or jacket, whatever. Who's buying that? it just seems out of place. Like everything is like 90 bucks to 100 or 65, and then you got this. It's just like out of nowhere. 700. Nobody sold Canadian Goose. Then they had some collaborations with Nike where you was able to like trying to push this whole like collaboration with Nike with like having jeans that was athletic, like Wiccan material, so it absorbs sweat, so the pants don't stink when you move around, or it has a material where if it rains, we had other stuff like that too, where if it rains, your jeans don't really get wet as much. You know, then they had stuff with Levi's where they had like completely sustainable. You remember those times where everything was like sustainability? So everything is like raw material, recycled material. It's like they'll like sell at a higher premium rate. It's like, how is this premium if this is like based upon recycled material? That's beyond me. But Levi's is one of those retail jobs where I remember the times even there where the music got to me. I was sick of the music. And in case you haven't noticed, like retail, they will play this default old like surfer circa 1950s type of music. You're like, what is this? You know, I mean, don't get me wrong, the music that they're playing now, I'm still like, what is this? But like old music, like it's like you heard it before in other places, but you just couldn't pinpoint where you heard it from. But you're hearing it again. Well, I heard it again working at Levi's. Like, oh baby, I'm a Stylo. Like, what is this? What is this? All this surfer like hipster music that they play over and over and over and over. And it got to the point where it's like, okay, I know exactly what they're gonna play next. I just know, because the way it's like set up, you know. But that's really what was going on there. It's like same type of stuff. They never really put me in the fitting room, thankfully, because I just can't stand. It's funny because this job, I just took it because I needed the money. Even though I took out loans, but I still wanted the work experience and also needed the money as well. And I'm not really a people person, you know. I'm not really someone who's like could easily just talk to people and have conversations or group conversations. So it really got me out of my comfort zone. But nonetheless, it was still one of those things where I'm like, Levi's. I don't think I'll ever buy any Levi's jeans. But, you know, it's a hipster vibe. I remember when hipsters started to really launch out, people was buying the trucker jackets and the trucker vests like hotcakes, man. Like, people was like buying it over and over and over. It just had that cool look. So I'll give Levi's credit to the fact that, you know, they definitely stayed true to their identity. They never really changed as much. But one thing I forgot to mention was closing hours. My goodness. I never like getting those shifts. I never like closing shifts at all. Why? Because the closing shifts, you had to not only, because since you was a sales associate, not only got to deal with customers a little bit, you know, before we are closing the store, but then you got to deal with fixing everything in your section. Now, we had a lot of jeans, all right? We had to use a ladder to go up there and fix it up. And with the jeans, so as I'm talking to you, I'm starting to remember stuff. We had to size them accordingly. So your 32 to 32 is right here at the middle. Then as you go up, is like the sizes are lighter, and then as you go down, the sizes are heavier, like a 38 out of 34 or something like that. So if you see a 38, 34 at the top, you got to use a ladder, take it out, and put it at the bottom. Then you have to refold the jeans, because the supervisor or manager is like, oh, let me look at your section. Fix that. Oh, you need to fix all of this. Fix this. And, and a lot of times I just did that because if you fix it too early, they're going to want you to stay there longer. I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing. And if you still fix it early and it looks good, well, you can't leave yet because you have to go to somebody else's section and fix their stuff. Oh, man. So I was doing that. There was times where I was the one behind because I was going through a phase. I'm like, okay, why am I still here? So I'm like getting lazy. I'm like, you guys fix my stuff. I want you guys to come here in the end and fix my stuff. But the worst part about it is, because mind you, this is still back then where Black Friday and whatchamacallit, the Thanksgiving stuff, Thanksgiving sale, Black Friday sale, it was still a thing in terms of like people are waiting in line, or there'll be like a whole conglomerate of people coming into the store during those times. And oh man, there was a time, right, where I felt like I had a little bit of like PTSD and my manager caught me with that, because it was so much people, and it was so much people that my body was like, my brain and my body was trying to register, like, should I talk to this? 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 Because my brain is very linear. It's like I like to fix things and complete things one by one. But when you got 70 to 80 people in your section and everything is super crowded, it was just like I was having like a glitch, like a video game glitch. Like I'm just like glitching a little bit. And my supervisor saw that. She just saw me glitching a little bit. And she was laughing. She was just straight up laughing at me. Like, you good? And she knows I'm not good, but she was just laughing like, yeah, man, you all right? Like, I'm like, yeah. I mean, because it's not like that anymore. Nowadays, everything is like, due to Amazon and online shopping, people rather just shop online than to go to the store. I mean, you still get a more people compared to normal when it comes down to those like Black Friday stuff. But it's not as crazy as it used to be. Like back then, it was insane. And I was there during those times. It was so much people. So much people that I was just overwhelmed. Like overwhelmed. And ironically, it was like I wanted them to get away honestly, I wanted them to get away from me. Because they had a lot of, Black Friday deals. So they was there like, hey, I need some help. Hey, I need help. Ironically, instead of me going up to them, they was coming up to me every second. Hey, you work here? Hey, can you help me with this? I'm like, yo, I'm on break. I'm on break. Oh, okay. Like, I don't want to help you. Like, God, jeez, so much people. You work here? Hey. And then the thing about it is that area was full of tourists. So we had a lot of tourists out there. And they would just come in droves during Black Friday. A whole family. Different types of tourists from France to Belgium to London to Australia. You name it, right? German, people from Germany, Russia, a lot of Europeans. Even Brazil, just different walks of life going inside the store. Excuse me, can you help me? Can you help me with this? Excuse me, can you help me? Excuse me, can you help me? I'm like, oh, no, I am on break. I don't work here. Get away from me. I don't work here. It seems you work here. You got the Levi's. They say Levi's. You got Levi's. They say Levi's. They don't say Levi's. They say Levi's. I want Levi's. Okay, but I don't work. Yeah, it was overwhelming. It was definitely overwhelming at those times. But then it's crazy because then they will just hire people part-time. Like literally, like not just like part-time like in terms of hours, but more like seasonal. That's the right way to phrase it. So these people were seasonal because they needed more hands on deck. So they will hire, they'll pretty much hire people temporarily just for the season. And then it's like dangling the carrot. And let me actually, I'm not going to draw a carrot. But it's literally just dangling the carrot, which is pretty much like, oh, but if you do really well, we might just keep you. And guess what? Spoiler alert. They don't. So they'll get rid of them in the end of January, which is sad because like some of them did a fantastic job. But then it's like, oh, well, the whole energy of so many people and them buying a crazy amount of products, well, that is ended because a lot of those people they went back to their country. And there was just vacation, right? They went back to their country, and now you got the drought, and the people like me who was part-time, it became more part-time because, like I said before, out calls. So you would get your check that's like $75, right? $75. And then the seasonal people are gone. And then all you hear is the rock away, rock away, rock away, rock away. I'm a Stylo. Blah. This weird surfer music. Weird. I keep on cool. Like what? What's funny? I don't understand one word that they're talking about. Have you noticed that all this like 1960s, 70s music, it's like, do they even have lyrics? They just making noise, It's like the feeling, bruh. Bro, it's the feeling, bruh. Rock away, I'ma follow. I say, rock away. If you know the song, I'm not doing this justice. Yeah, just music like that, It's just, gosh, man. But yeah, working at Levi is my first retail job, and I was working there for 2 years. 2 years. And I knew that if I was still working there, they was gonna get rid of me. You can always feel the tension with some of the supervisors and managers, because everything is politics. If you're there for some time in any type of job and you're not like politically kissing their butts and doing all these things to like make sure you're good as far as being one of the boys or one of the groupies of the cool kids, right? Because we always thought, oh, after high school, and you don't have to deal with that. No, it's like that forever in your life. If you're not part of the cool kids, they're gonna get rid of you. Even if you're really good at your job, right? Like I told you with the guy who was really good in the 501 section. He was the best, consistently getting sales left to right, right? He had the skills, but they never moved him up. Because when they move you up, they pay you more. That's a sign. That's a sign of respect, right? That's a sign of respect. We like what you do. We appreciate what you do. You're making us a crap load of money. The least we can do is bump up your pay rate to show that we appreciate your hard work. Nah, let's leave him there. He's our dog. He's our dog. We like to give him the same amount of work so he could do the same tricks, right? He's an old dog that just doesn't know or understand that we're not going to bump him up. And eventually when he did understand it, that's when he left. So okay, I'll just use my skills somewhere else. Then about he came from a military background, so it made sense why and how he was very punctual, diligent, consistent, right? And I remember this one time, this is switching topics a little bit. There was this old lady that worked there. It was such a weird dynamic. Now, clearly, she didn't need the money. She was working there just to keep herself alive, like she was like in her 70s. 60s or 70s. So she was the oldest person there, and she was a sales associate. And it was just so funny how the managers will respect her because of her age, and it just had this awkward, because she's much older, like, hey, Mrs. This, you could go on break if you want to. Like, it had this weird dynamic where it's like, usually managers, we always depict them as, they're older than you, they have more experience than you. But it's always a weird dynamic where it's like your manager is much younger than you. So we have this indoctrination of like, if someone is a manager, they gotta be older than you, which it logically makes sense, but there are times where it's not like that. Your manager is way younger than you. And in this circumstance, this is a granny. So she didn't need the money. She just did it to just work for the sake of working. And she wasn't there too long, actually. I didn't really talk to her as much, but it just had that funny awkwardness of like, oh, well, he's a manager. He's telling her in a polite way, like, hey, you can go on break. Hey, you could take your 15. And that's the one thing too, like, as I'm talking to you guys about this, or if anyone's listening to this, you always felt like a little kid working retail. Like when I worked in Levi's, I felt like a little kid because you got to ask for permission all the time. Can I use the restroom? Yes, you may. Hey, I just want to know, can I take my 15? Yes, you may. Hey, I want to know, can I go on break? Yes, you may. Hey, I just want to know, can I breathe? No, you may not. That's right. I want you to struggle. Hold it, hold it, hold it. That's right. Hey, it was so annoying, man. It was so annoying, man. Just like asking people for permission to just, oh man. But that's how it was. So I'm baffled sometimes when people tell me, oh, I never worked retail in my life. Like my ex was like that, like, I never worked retail in my life. I just had an internship and I went right into the workforce of working corporate. Like, what? Like, everything in my life always stemmed from doing things the long way. Like, I was never fortunate to have any type of privileged perks. Like, everything was just like, you gotta do it the long way. I worked many times working retail, but this was my first one. And I'm thankful for them giving me the opportunity. Like, even though it sounds like I'm bashing on them, I still gotta appreciate them giving me the opportunity because I never worked at all. Those years I never worked at all. And I also gotta thank my niece, because it wasn't for her, even though I didn't get the job immediately after that, but still, like, they remembered me because I brought my niece, right? Now here I'm just gonna do quick not cross hashing, but yeah, just finish it up. But yeah, this was a really good draw and talk. It's just definitely different, because normally I used to have like other videos that I took out where I'll have it more coherent, where I have it as a B-roll, which is I'm just drawing, not talking, but then I'll just talk over what I already created. And I like this, that I'm able to challenge my brain to draw, but at the same time just go with the flow and being able to talk and draw. And that's definitely difficult, because there's times where I gotta stop, and really try to figure out what I'm trying to say, especially since I have no script, I'm just talking. So I definitely like the challenge, and also it just feels good to just relax and just to just let loose and talk about the things that I went through in the past, you know, because in life you're your best representative, right? Like whatever you went through, no one could best represent you other than yourself, right? Not even a lawyer in terms of what you went through in life. So it's always good to just talk to a friend or do what I'm doing, make a video about it. Not all the time you have, you know, friends readily available to listen to what you went through. Why not just put it out there towards whoever is willing to listen to it? So that's my draw and talk illustration here of Levi's. So stay tuned, I guess, not I guess, but stay tuned, because I will do, if you guys want me to do more stuff like this, let me know. But I'm definitely wanting to do more stuff where I'm able to talk to you guys about like my experiences through art, through working retail, struggling artists, and all that stuff. So here it is, close up, more of a close up angle. Just sketch. That's that. Don't forget to like the video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here.